Here yesterday morning, heard her introduced by Keith Marzullo when he was giving his talk yesterday. Susanne was at Purdue University. That's her home institution, still is. Is at Purdue University, but she's on leave right now at the National Science Foundation, where she is the division director for the Division of Computing and Communications Foundations, or CCF, within the CISE Directorate. And she has done terrific research in mobile environments, parallel distribution, parallel and distributed computation, and so on. And she has served on the boards of the CRA as well as CRAW. And so it's my pleasure to introduce our final speaker today, but she's talking about a very important subject as well, and that is how to get a job.
Okay, thank you, Irvin. So I'm really not talking from the NSF point of view here at all, because what I tell you are some of the things that are experiences from when I hired faculty, when I was department head, and also from the CRAW workshops that run, and some of you have been to. So, and it's really, I talk about academia, industry, and government labs, even though I know very little about government labs, and some of those slides are actually from people they have contributed them. I may have more slides than I really go through in detail. I think some of the slides you will see have material that you may want to take a look at once you really apply for a job. So here you are. Here's your choices. And you already made a choice because you went on to be a postdoc. And now look at all the other options you have. And all other is whatever you do that I don't talk about. And I really will only talk about the three green ones here, which you can go to from where you are right now. I think you're more mature than the PhD students that are looking for a job, but I still thought I would leave this complete. You are gonna, if you go in academia, you apply as an assistant professor, and what are you gonna be judged at eventually? I mean, your goal is then to get tenure, and the most important thing is really setting up an independent research program that is independent from your PhD work, from your postdoc work, that's your own, that is going to have publications, funding, you've supervised students. Plus, and I was said earlier, yes, you'll also be expected to do some service. That really depends. You may get in a department that really protects you. You may get in a department that really dumps on you. And you may not be able to tell until you get there. If you go in an industry lab, most people that end up going, well, some people go, that's because that's where the job is. But I think overarching, if you ask people, why did you go there? It's because they want to work on real problems. They want to have access to real data. They will work on things that are relevant to the company. Some people say, I like it because there's no funding pressure. But then when it comes to going to conferences, they realize, oops, they don't want me to go to conferences. So there is a funding problem for certain things. Patents may be more important than paper. You will be evaluated both in academia and in industry, but in industry, you'll be evaluated with respect to your value to the company. And overall, it's not a stable environment. And you may not know what you will be doing 3 years from now. The government labs, I won't really say too much. They really fall into two groups. The basic research ones, where it's really more an open research environment, and the weapons lab, which are very closed but have lots of money and have a high level of security. So some of you may have been interned in some of them, and I think those are, they are, if you're really interested, and we'd be happy to link, I'd be happy to link you up with people who can give you more. This was a chart that is not perfect, but I think if you compare them, you compare the pay, you compare the job security, the research freedom, and the funding and amenities, and we are going from lower to higher on this. There was a consensus that senior academia will put on the very high end of the pay scale, which of course things get a little messy, a little confusing there. I think the job security will overall people will rate this way. The industry freedom, the research freedom, and then of course in the unclassified government labs where people will not even pay for your Coke, or the rules are very. Honestly, if you go to NSF cannot pay for bottled water. So I mean, when you start looking at government labs and what is allowable, you have a very different set of rules, which sometimes makes little sense. So, okay, and so here I like graphs and graph algorithms, so we can of course figure out how can I go from here to there, and there are a lot of cycles. Okay, people move, but people don't move all over, and so there is of course you can't go back to be a postdoc. I think that's one thing you realize. That's it. You can enjoy it. Like we'll said on the first day, we will think of it as a great time of having a lot of flexibility and freedom. Research funding, research faculty, I mean faculty where you're hired as an assistant research faculty, you get evaluated, you get promoted, but you bring in your own funds. I say a little bit about teaching faculty. Some of you, in teaching institutions, some of you may decide, I really want to go to a liberal arts school. I really want to go in a high-quality undergraduate environment. And that's a very different decision. From that one, you may be able to go to industry, but you can't move into a research institution very easily. I'll say a little bit about that. So I think what you should do now, that's really what the slide is about. Many of these things you're doing and you've heard before. I think the most important one is have ambitious research goals and have a broad research goal. Don't work in a narrow area. This is not the time where you can say, oh, I'm working on X, Y, and Z in area A. You really have to look at all different, even if you're looking at, I think even if you are, say, I'm in systems, I'm in software engineering, you'd want to really sort of know what all else am I interested in, who all could I collaborate with. You'd really want to be as broad as possible. You continue, you have travel funds, continue to attend conferences, network with people. Improve your communication skills. That is very important. Your writing skills are going to come into play when you write your grant proposals. Your communication skills as you go to conferences and as you get interviews. I can't tell you there's a significant fraction of people at Purdue we interviewed, we didn't make them offer because we didn't feel they could really communicate well. Another one, get used to rejection. I mean, if you never get rejected, you're doing something wrong. So I think that's just part of it. And as you apply and look for jobs, you will get rejection. You will not get what you want. You have to move forward. Ask for advice wherever you are. You will get lots of advice, but realize not every advice will work for you. Follow the hiring trends. If you haven't started looking at them now, you really follow them now. You look at what the CRA does. You look at you talk to people in the departments that you know from conferences. And finally, have a professional image. I think that that's one of those P's on the table here. Have a complete web page. There are lots of people who get your name and they will not look up and go to the hiring webpage and see what you uploaded. They will go to your webpage, and if they don't find what they want, they'll just say, oh, go on to the next one. Okay? So those are important do's. Oh, why did I put a car there? What? Oh, that's a nice way of putting it. Unfortunately, okay, I think that is very nice. But I tell you honestly, you're like a car. You take your first job. You're very attractive to many departments because you get hired as a fresh PhD. You get the benefit of the doubt. You have the promise. You get hired. Don't take a job and say, I'm looking for another one in 2 years. You're like a car. Have you ever bought a car and want to sell it again? The value drops right away as you take it out of the showroom. Okay? So you immediately become a used car. So this is so important. Take another postdoc before you take a position at a place where you say, well, let me move to A, and in 2 years I can look for a better position somewhere else. It doesn't work like that. You need to go for the best position at the right time and rather wait and go in some kind of temporary position and build your record. So that's why I have a car, and that it's a Volvo is an accident. I just took the first picture I found. Okay. Sort of decisions that you'll have to make is not, some of you are postdocs, do research and realize, I'm not really sure I'd like to do only research. I'd like teaching as much. So maybe I want to be evaluated both on teaching and research, and you are actually considering a teaching institution. Do you want to be in a small or in a large department? Do you want to work with, how important is it to work with grad students or PhD students? How important is it to have smart undergraduates? How risk tolerant are you? And how important is salary and location, even though some of those things become important as you have options. So those are, the government decisions are somewhat different. You will be working in teams. How much do you want to be able to influence your own research direction? How much important is it to you that you can actually publish and the work is not classified? Are you willing to change your research depending on funds and trends in the company? And the last two questions are the same. So somewhat different questions you'll ask, and if you have the choice, you decide on. I tell you a couple of things that, I think 2 slides, on things that are not said, but I think are important to realize. If you go to a teaching institution, and I really mean a liberal arts college that has top students but is not interested in a graduate program, faculty that go there are expected to have a research program. They're expected to have to do research with the undergraduates, and their expectations on whom they hire are actually quite high. I mean, look at the people that are hired at Harvey Mudd, Carleton College, Amherst, Williams, Oberlin. Pick your top 30 undergraduate institutions, and they have small CS programs. They have very good people. I think the pay is not as high, maybe I shouldn't say poor, it's not as high as universities' industrial ones. The teaching loads are somewhat higher, but you have undergrads being TAs, and they're actually pretty smart, and the classes are small. And it is a different lifestyle in some sense. Overall, many people that make this decision are actually very happy there. And then, of course, if you're in teaching, there are teaching positions at research universities that are sort of a teaching track, which may have a better pay, but in some sense, you are you're not quite the status of a research faculty. And if you talk to some people, Duke, for example, and Carnegie Mellon have positions like that, and you can talk to some faculty and get a sense on what this is like. But these exist, and I think the important one is if you want to go a top-notch liberal arts school, you need to prepare, and don't do it just sort of, oh, I'm going to try it. Statistically, most faculty that are hired get tenure. I think it's close to about 85–90% overall. The reason is that, so that means just think of you as the car leaving the showroom. If a department will hire you, they really expect you to be successful. The cost for them is way too high to really just sort of say, oh, if it doesn't work out, we'll just kick the person out. We just don't renew the contract in 3 years. It's expensive to hire junior faculty. There's a mentoring effort. There's time and money. And the goal is that a department who makes a hire wants that hire to be successful. And so I think when you start, you really have to start, I'm going to fulfill the expectations that they have. So these are some things when you look at which I think are fairly straightforward. I mean, you look at the research area, you look at the quality of the conferences and the journals, you look at the letter. You pretty much are expected to have a letter from your advisor, and everybody expects this to be a strong letter. And there is the issue of how do you fit in this department, and sometimes you actually don't know that. You think you're a good fit and you're not. And so by the time you visit, you may know this, or you may know somebody and call people up to find out. I think the difference to the teaching colleges is that you have to have papers in The journals are not as important in general. You need to have conference papers for sure. You need to have a demonstrated enthusiasm for teaching, and you need to have experience. And you have to show an understanding on what a teaching institution is about, what the students, who the students are, and what life goes on there. Many of you did not go to such an institution, and so this is just something that even at the phone interviews, that's where a lot of faculty that want to go into teaching institutions sort of drop out. You don't know how many slots there are because sometimes even the department doesn't know that, and many of the other things. Yes? Sure.
What about departments which, for instance, have master program but no PhD program?
I think overall, an institution that has a master's program but not a PhD program will have an expectation that faculty have a research program.
So is it closer to research institutions?
That varies. I think there are some that plan to have a PhD program. So there are very few in this category, and you really have to look at them carefully. Some of them will have the same expectations of their faculty than a research institution. Okay.
And from the perspective of going from one to another,
I think well, it depends on your research. I think if you go to a teaching institutions, you don't have time to do research except the summer. And the research you do as a student will be of a different level. And so it's very rare that somebody from a teaching college moves into a research environment, and generally they don't want to. Okay? The labs, I think one of the things that you'll see on these slides, I think when you look at labs and industry, being able to work in a team and fitting in with what exists is a theme that you will see all the time. Okay, I think the hiring in the labs and in the industry with respect to the record you have on research will be pretty much equivalent. Of course, then it goes, do you really match what we're looking for? There are some classified labs where it's more important that you have the background, that you can get the security clearance, that you can work in this large project in the team, and that maybe the publications for them are not as important, and you probably will not have any. So I think that's one environment.
Can I ask a quick question about the prior slide? Would you say there's a difference in what maybe a top 10 department looks for rather than top 30?
No, because the top 30 all think they're in the top 10. Okay? So, and to be honest, so let me make it the top 50. It's not. I think the expectation, and I can tell you from just being at NSF and seeing one cycle of career proposals, I think there are the departments much lower ranked than maybe below 30, 40, who have high expectations of their faculty, and their faculty are expected to write career proposals. So I think that is partially because they can, there are two main reasons. One is they feel they should be getting research funding and support the institution that way. And the second one is that can actually hire people from very research intensive programs. And so that says, well, yes, so you will continue to do the research. That it is, of course, much more difficult to have a thriving research program in that environment is a different question. Yeah, that's a good question. The application sounds for the academia sounds straightforward, but yet I can tell you there are a lot of applications that don't look right. Write a cover letter. When I was head, I read every cover letter, and sometimes the cover letter said nothing, sometimes they said a lot. The committee members never read the cover letters. Okay, but I think it is important to have a cover letter. Your reader should be very complete. Don't go and ask them for reference. Don't say references will be provided upon request. It's just a hassle. Just put it all in. Some institutions will ask for references right away. Others will only do it when they want them. Your research statement should be both interesting, it should be well written, it should be broad, it should be exciting, it should be that people read this, and even if they're not in the area, they say, I'd like to talk to this person. And your teaching statement are 2 and 1 pages. You know, maybe it's going to be 3 pages, 2 pages. I don't think that's necessarily that's a requirement. Don't give this really broad and fluffy teaching philosophy statement that says nothing about you. Really explain your experience, explain what you plan on to, explain what your interests are. So it looks simple, but yet there are many packages that don't look as good as they could. Get input from people. You are in institutions where people can just give it to them and ask them, what do you think if you get this? Well, how does this look to you? And in the government labs, the cover letter is by far more important because the cover letter needs to address the job description. And they're not looking for just a researcher. It's very specific what they're looking for. So you have to show that you know what they're looking for. And your whole resume has to really fit and be made to fit. You probably will have a different resume, a different letter for different positions. All right, how do you go about finding who's hiring, where to find the jobs? And like Sue Graham said yesterday, nobody's going to walk up to you and say, please apply, we have a job ready for you. You'll have to work. It is competitive, and I think you really need to do your homework, and you hope you're lucky. Check the ads. The CRA ads, the ACM, IEEE, are probably the most relevant. Save yourself the trouble to read the journal, not the Chronicle of Higher Education for ads. Just I think stick with those 3, and Andy will tell you that the CRA ones are the most important ones. This is time-consuming, but check departmental websites. I can tell you at Purdue, we had in the last month, we did get a position for a theory faculty. So this is really late for us, and we had a head change, and the interim head did get a position for algorithm theory. I'm not even sure when this will be in an ad, but it is on the web page. So the question is, how do you actually then find out? So one thing is the departments you're really interested in, check the web pages. If you know people that know somebody, you know, ask around. Ask around if you can get some input. Realize that, you know, in many institutions, there is a CS department, there is an ECE department, there is an iSchool. Sometimes these lines are very blurred. You heard Bobby Schnabel talk about it Now, he's in a very broad school, and, you know, it covers CS, it covers many other things, and sometimes, you know, you have to sort of look and say, you know, just see what the people are doing in there and what they're looking for. Sometimes you could fit in a department that isn't the one, that doesn't have the title of the department you came from. Don't be picky. I think that is clearly important. You do want to get, once you're really in your second year and you want a job, you do want to have something, and you apply in a very broad way, and you can see what feedback you get. And you can always apply without a letter, without them interested in hiring, and without an ad posted. That's, you know, you can be lucky. Sometimes if somebody leaves and says, and resigns in early January, and it's early enough that they can they can take an opportunity of a great application to fill a position, they may do it. So, you know, all these things may work, may not work, but I think you have to do them all to be successful. Yeah. Well, you know, I think it is really hard. You know, so I think it is. You feel much more comfortable if you know you have interviewed and you have an offer. Now, the first job you take and the first offer you get shouldn't be the same thing. Okay, so and you really don't know the situation, and you may actually decide you may have a plan B of taking another postdoc or going in or take a postdoc position in industry or somewhere. But I think when you're really serious about finding an academic job, you really start casting a very wide net. And you will, and if you if you interview somewhere where you don't think you're gonna go because that's not where you want to take off with your new car. You get a lot of experience just going through the interview process, okay? And I think that experience, by the time you get called and invited to a department you really like, you already know some of the do's and don'ts. And that's why I think it's important. You always want to have kids are told to apply to safety schools, and it isn't quite the same, but you do want to go to departments where you're saying, "Now, not my first pick, but I still want to give it a shot." These are, the hiring process is a very random one. I mean, I would have a year where I'd had 450 applications, and we would interview maybe 20 people, 20, 25 people, which was actually a lot. And so there's an enormous filter that filtering that happens. Sometimes you hear something back, sometimes you hear nothing back. Hopefully the systems are set up that at least you get an acknowledgement. It's all going to be online. Every site's going to be different, and so the details really vary quite a bit. I would say that more and more institutions will make phone interviews because they have many applicants, because the cost of bringing somebody in is quite high. So be prepared and make a mock phone interview and answer those questions. They're not necessarily comfortable because there is you, and on the other end you generally have more than one person. It could be 2 or 3 people sitting there. Make sure sometimes they send you a question ahead, sometimes they don't. Know who's on the other end before you actually are on this interview. And a lot of this, there are people in a phone interview who all of a sudden can make it to the top, and there are people after a phone interview, after 15 minutes, there was nothing to say anymore. That was it. Even though we thought that was a really good resume. Practice that. You can actually do this, and it's more and more common. It's common in other fields, and 10 years ago in computer science, it was hardly heard of, but it is becoming almost a norm. It is okay. So once you've applied and now you're waiting, it is okay to contact somebody in the department to ask for you, is it what I'm looking for? Is it okay to say, oh, I'm in the area, can I stop by? I think you have to sort of take all these things they may work, they may not work. Sometimes being very pushy doesn't help at all. I think the best thing is sometimes to have a faculty who has contacts to actually see what are you really looking for, okay? Calling up the administrative assistant and asking and trying to pump information out usually isn't gonna work. Okay, so you did all that, you come for an interview. Really, when you get invited, they're investing a lot of time and energy in that, and so a department really wants to see what you're about. You want to convince them what you will add as strengths to the department, that you will make a good colleague, a good citizen, and that your research is really of interest to many of them. You'll probably give a talk. Hopefully not at the very end. You'll have meetings one-on-one. You'll meet a department head for sure. Sometimes you'll meet a dean. You meet with grad students. If they're not on the schedule, you should probably ask for it. You may have meals with a group. It's generally exhausting. Okay? In a government lab, it is actually it's very similar. Many of these things are the same. I think you meet with human resources, which you wouldn't be in academia, and they may not be able to pay for your meals. And so that's reality, and there's nothing against you. When you give your talk, I think you want to come across as somebody who can really, who's smart, who has done research that is strong and important, who solved important problem, that you are an effective communicator, and you can really have something interesting to say to everybody in the audience. You want to have people outside this area go away with having learned something new. You want to have the experts understand what you've done and be impressed. You want to practice, 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 and you never want to go overtime. Okay? And hopefully, if you have disruptive faculty in the audience, somebody who's your host will manage that. Just be always gracious. And there's always the sentence, I'll be so happy to talk to you after my talk. I hope you're on my schedule. And you actually hope he's not or she's not. Okay? So when you meet the faculty, really, you will meet people that first of all, you should probably have done some research who they are. You want your goal is that in many departments, they will be asked for input. And everybody that you meet should have the impression saying, you know what, I think this would make a really good colleague, whether they're in your area or not. And that really should be your goal. You'll have your elevator speeches ready, 10 minutes for the person who just simply sits there and looks at you. Make it 15 minutes. You know, some people just don't say much. There are other people that only talk about themselves. You want to make sure you get some time to say something as well. You want to know whom you're talking, so you be prepared to have some questions. And in most cases, this is actually interesting and enjoyable, and and you have to pace yourself. You do. I list this here. I'm not going to go through. In many situations, the questions come naturally, but there are then these people that are not in your area that don't seem very talkative. Here are some things you can ask them, and I'll post that. You'll meet a chair and a dean, and that's really where you will ask some of the questions that you're interested in timing of offers, in salaries, in startups, in anything that really is very particular towards the actual hire. If you meet a dean, they many times are not from your area, so it will be those can be fun meetings. They can be meetings where you recognize, you know, this is somebody who really I'm on the schedule. That's it. Okay. I have questions here, that are sort of standard. Questions for a head, mentoring. A mentoring program is one of them. Just the whole process of how faculty get reviewed and what's the expectation for tenures. And so here are some of the questions. In the industry, I think it is, the issue of funding for conferences is, and indeed one that comes up over and over, that it is an issue, so that's perfectly okay to ask. The evaluation, you can ask about sabbaticals, which most likely will not exist. In academia, they will exist. And just sort of long-term issues on the projects you're supposed to work on and for that department. So these are just examples. Meals. Okay. Figure out there are good topics and safe topics to talk about. I mean, don't talk about the obvious politics, religion, conduct of personal life. Don't bring them up. You never know who the people are you meet. I give you a website here that is at Purdue, which lists all the questions that are illegal to be asked. All right, it's like, how many kids do you have? It's irrelevant to your job. Basically, everything is a question is illegal if it's not related to the performance on your job. Okay, and it is interesting that I have hired people we've interviewed people who really knew all these questions, and when we're asked, would simply look and say, "Can you repeat this again?" And the person would then usually realize, oh, I'd asked something that I wasn't supposed to ask. At the same time, I know I had faculty where in the evening at dinner, especially after a glass of wine, felt very quickly, so where else are you interviewing? Now, first of all, you can Google this, and you can probably find out where everybody else is interviewing. And it is not related to the job that they're looking for. And some people are very happy to say this, but others really don't want to. Now, if you bring this up, of course, then it becomes fair game. If you're saying, you know, I have 2 children, can you tell me about the schools and the daycare, then that's fine. But the faculty really aren't supposed to ask, you know, do you need daycare? They could say, let me tell you about the great daycare facilities we have. So be aware of this. Some people or some candidates really don't like to be asked certain questions, and others don't really care. But know that, okay? So, and this is a hiring manual that every institution will have. I just happen to give you the one I know. Yeah. You mean at dinner? Yeah. No, I think the dinner, you know, if we had a candidate who cannot stop talking technical, I'm not sure that's so good, okay? So dinner is usually a group of people that you didn't meet in a half hour, maybe because they were too busy or because they're not in your area. So dinners tend to be social. And they tend to be more on topics that relate to your job but are not on your research. And I think if the discussion does get to be research-oriented, make sure that it's of interest to everybody. Okay? I hope you have that problem, that you have so many trips to schedule that you say, how am I going to best do this? I mean, you really don't want to pack in too many trips because flights can be delayed and you will get exhausted. I think this is one issue is, you know, be comfortable when you interview. It is better to feel good than to look good. Because if your shoes pinch because they're new and you can't take off your jacket but you're terribly hot, that's not going to be, you know, you're going to be too focused on this condition and not really on what you're supposed to do. If you go somewhere where it's cold, bring a coat. You know, I mean, just you're going to fly across. I mean, dress appropriately, and you know, just drink plenty of fluids and do all these things that your mother probably told you. Okay. I want to spend some time on this topic. Actually, at Purdue, since it's a small town, almost everybody that we made an offer had a 2-body opportunity, as I call them. And because that was the only way it got resolved. And most people have, you know, they may be in the need of looking for 2 jobs in the same area, not necessarily academia. And so what do you do and when to tell? You know, and that is really something to think through, and it differs on what place you're actually looking at. First of all, if you're looking at if it's a couple and the second job is really has nothing to do with academia and can easily be fulfilled by the surrounding area, and you may need some assistance and some pointers, but isn't really, you know, it's going to work out. Just resolve it then and bring it up when you come back for a second visit or something. But I think if it involves 2 academic positions, it is something that you want to think through. So when to tell is your choice, and I'll go through the different scenarios, and I have seen them all. There are cases where the couple gives a full disclosure in the cover letter. Now, you have to read the cover letter. Okay, that's about so that's one reason I read all the cover letters, because if they said it, that's when they put it. And you can sometimes not tell easily at all, because getting 2 applications from the same institution happens, okay? So at this point, you know, if it's known ahead of time, I think you really also need to indicate whether you're only interested in 2 positions, or whether you still want to be considered separately, but you just wanted us to know, and you are potentially interested, a commuting marriage or relationship is something you would be willing to do. Okay, so once you state it, it would be good to say, and here is what I hope to be doing. Okay, so at that point, honestly, I would say the chair of the committee, the head, knows that, and in many cases we let the committee evaluate it without knowing this at all. We don't want it to be influenced. You can also disclose it after you've been contacted for an interview. So you get the call, you get called to come for an interview, or it could be a phone interview or an on-site interview, and that means they're already interested in you. And at that point you say, I want you to realize I have a constraint. And make it then also clear that means you're still going to come for an interview, but here is if you're interested in an offer, if I'm interested in accepting it, here is something that I want you to know, and I want you to probably give me some input how I can solve my situation. I had one case of a faculty that I hired who in the phone interview said, was somebody we really wanted, and said in the phone interview, I have a spouse who's looking for an academic position in psychology. And there are tons of psychology undergraduates, which means there are no position in psychology. And she said, I still want to interview, but I want you to know that now. So since I knew it early, I was actually I went to psychology, who just in the rudest way told me they're not interested. And then I went to communications, which is actually doing, the communications department does stuff that this spouse did, and they said, this is potentially interesting. And they said, interview the lady. If you make her an offer, we'll bring the husband in, we'll take a look at. And it turns out we hired them both. And actually, she had an offer from CMU. And we got it because we were able to solve that problem. The only reason I was able to solve it is because she told me early. It was really difficult for me, but it worked. So, but some people may not say until later. Yes, you had a question?
Yes, all these things you're saying about academic positions, would you say it also applies to positions within the university that are not tenure track?
No, that's different. I'll get back to that. And I've had those too. They're different. If the spouse looks for a professional position in the university, I don't really approach anybody until I have that person has the offer. Okay? I don't think anybody will want to talk to me. I mean, they could tell me something, but I wait longer. This is hard because you have to have a position. You need to have faculty votes. You need to find out if they have no position, they need to find, there's a mechanism that Purdue has, and many institutions have to create these bridge funds for positions. And so that's what really takes the time. For many professional positions, they either have it or don't have it, and they're much more flexible to work with you.
So then that means your advice would be it would be better to wait longer.
Yeah. If you're saying, I had one faculty who had a wife who had a lawyer, and in the end she was hired by the information technology office as a lawyer after looking also at position at law firms in the same town. We really didn't need to deal with this until actually the faculty arrived here. Okay. Now you could also tell him at the visit. I actually think if I had my choice, that's the one I like the least. Okay, because at the visit, if they say it, it could actually put a spin on the visit that puts so much focus on this problem that you just told of, and we don't know how to really resolve it, that it takes time away from me actually looking at the person and what you would contribute to this department. But it happens, okay? And actually sometimes in one case it comes up in a dinner conversation, and the person actually never says so, but a faculty comes back and says, you realize that this person, that we have a two-body situation. And, but I haven't been told, so as far as I'm concerned, we don't have one. So think about this carefully if you do really want to bring it up in the visit. The other one is once you make the offer. And that's like, okay, you want me, but if you want me, here's what else I need. And that can work or cannot work. If that could be a timing problem. And so if it is a faculty position, if it's a research position, sometimes that's not that hard to create. But if it's a faculty position in the same or in another department, there may just be, the timing may be really bad. So, and again, I mean, every location is different because, in some places, some locations, there are a couple of options that could work out. If there are two universities, are these two actually collaborating with each other? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So I don't have a good algorithm for you to do it, but in all cases, there doesn't exist a right and a wrong, but you really think it through carefully what you think works the best for one particular institution. Yeah?
Are there cases where people feel like, I guess the hiring or the department feels like you were kind of hiding it from them, like if you wait until later, is there a decision?
Well, I don't think so. To be honest, for a lot of people, one expects that. Okay, and I always view this as that it's an opportunity to get somebody really good. Okay, and I wasn't always successful in making it work, and actually in one case I could do nothing because it was with the business school, and they said, we don't do this kind of stuff of hiring whatever you tell us, okay? It was really bad, and the person came nevertheless, and the spouse found a job and doing something else. So, I actually liked to know earlier, but that was because I understood how to actually solve certain things, and I liked the time, but I can understand why people feel I want to be evaluated on my contributions, and I don't want that to influence. Once I have the offer, then I will bring it up. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? So this is, of course, some of this we've already said, that, it is really good, when we dealt with the one with the law firm, I actually was able to, Purdue has a law office, has lawyers, and they work with a law office downtown. And through this connection, actually, this person did get an interview in the law office downtown, and then also was hired by information technology. And so it turned out to be that actually the university was able to network and actually do something with non-academic positions. Those things, they're pretty much random. It's completely unexpected. They sometimes work, they sometimes don't. So there is, of course, then the issue that some people come and try to work it out later, and it's easier to do when you aren't there if they really want you, because I get the dean, I get the provost to make phone calls. So, okay. I guess after the visit, there are some people who send the nicest emails to everybody and tell them they had the best conversation ever. Hey, but the same email went to 10 people, and we all feel really good for a minute until we realize everybody got the same thing. So it's nice. I mean, I would say send an email to somebody who really went out of their way and thank them for something if they fixed something for you and helped you out. Sometimes the person who makes the arrangements is not a faculty. They appreciate it the most because that's their job, but they really try to make sure that everything works. And I think those are probably the ones where they really feel, yes, I did the things right. File for reimbursements promptly. Make sure you follow their rules. After the visit, it's again, you're waiting for an action from the department, and then the question that you have is say, well, can I ask you, when can I call up and ask, are you going to make me an offer? What's wrong with you? Okay? And so when can you do that? It's okay to contact the department if you have an offer from another institution. That's perfectly, actually, that's all right. And that sometimes is something that one puts in front of the faculty when we had regular hiring meetings. That is legitimate reason to let them know. Actually, you should. Anywhere you interviewed, you haven't had a decision, when you have an offer saying, I have an offer, I'm really interested in that, so I have about a 2-3 week time frame. If you're interested, that's really when I would have to hear. Offers you get generally nowadays have to have really tight constraints. There's actually, you may be told, I sometimes told people I have an offer in the works, and I told them I will not really send the offer out until 2 weeks from now, because once I send it out, I can only give you 10 days. Okay, and so I would give them more time by just sort of saying, well, we are working on the offer. I sent them a PDF so they could see it, but the official one wouldn't come. Some get the offer and say, I'd love to accept it, but I really need to come back for a second visit. That bought them some more time. Okay, you gotta really understand the rules, but that sometimes works. And I had people come back for a second visit only to buy time so they can get the offer from the other institution they wanted. Okay, but those are the rules of the game, and there are no hard feelings. I mean, you just sort of play along, right? I didn't have to have the person come for a second visit, but we felt that was something we want to do, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so and finally, I think this is important. This is a small community, and I think you want to make sure you always tell the truth, and you don't tell one institution one thing and another one another thing, or you tell them all you're the first choice. Never tell where you interview, I will accept the offer if you make it. I mean, this is really something that you don't want to say. And realize that the people, that the institutions that are interviewing, they talk to each other. We know sort of who has offers from whom. And so you want to make sure that you don't really create something. One of my stories was there was one guy who was collecting 10 offers. It was about 2004, I think. And it was like everybody's hiring schedule was on hold, and he was negotiating with 10 institutions. The big 10 institutions then meet every fall, and everybody said, oh, do you remember? We had a very interesting hiring case, and it turns out 5 of these institutions had an offer out at the same time. And it just didn't leave a very good feeling. So those are things, that they get known, and I think it is good to be, to not talk too much, to tell the truth, and to be, in some sense, honest. Finally, what can you negotiate with the offer? You can negotiate the start date. I think this is really, if a place really wants you and you say, I want to come in January and not in September, that's the last thing I would argue about. If a person wants a whole year later, I would say I would be cautious. You could ask for the teaching load in your first year, how much and what you teach, the startup package. It's certainly something, here are some of the standard things. There's some negotiation. You could talk about tenure clock issues. If you've been a postdoc and you feel you should come up earlier, or if you have some situations where you feel you want to stop the clock. You want to know salaries with respect to everybody else, which means you go and look at the Talby data. Your moving expenses, in some places subsidized housing, childcare, community service. These are all things that once you're getting an offer, many of those can be actually written in the offer and can be negotiated. Yeah.
Just really quickly, regarding tenure clock issues, do you know how often pre-tenure faculty switch institutions and how departments view that kind of a move? Or does it depend on how close to tenure they are? Like that?
It depends whether you move in rank up or down, right? And so I think sometimes you move and you actually get your tenure clock reset at 0. And people like that because it gives them more time. Sometimes I'd actually hire them with a full 6-year, 5-year cycle, but expect them to bring them up in 3 years. You can always come up earlier, but you can't come up later than your contract. Okay, so these are all things, and these, some people want to be done, want to come up as soon as possible, and others say, I want as much time, and it really depends. And there's a fair amount of flexibility, okay, and on the type of institutions and how they view it. I mean, it's possible that there are people that go from a tenured associate professor to an assistant professor position because they feel they really want to be in that department, and that's what they get. These things happen, I think these are some of the on the labs. What time should Irvin, how much time is left, Irvin? Okay. There are. I think there are some differences. There's equipment, travel funding. There are also starting dates. There is the most important one is here. How much time do you have for your own research? That's something that can be often negotiated, and other expenses are very similar. So overall, I think you want a job that you want to go to a place where they want you, where you want to go, and where you feel you get rewarded for what you're doing and you enjoy what you're doing. And I think, like I said at the beginning, you will get rejections. Actually, since I'm at NSF, there are no rejections. There are only declines. We don't reject anything. And okay, so we award or decline. And so, but if you never hear no, you really didn't ask for enough. And so there's some people who, when it comes to negotiating offers and packages, are masters, and you think, May, you should get an MBA. And then others who really, you wish, you really should be asking for this, okay? So there's a big difference. But I think you sort of have to feel what you feel comfortable and what you really deserve by looking at what happens in other places. And yes, so overall, I do hope that you have a successful hiring season, and that as the car leaving the garage, that you really are heading in the right directions and you're happy. Okay, so these are the people that helped me from the various sources, and you'll make the slides available. And I can stay around. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to stay around if Erwin wants to wrap this up.
I have a question about campus visits that involve the two-buddy program. How normal is this?
You mean for the second visit?
For the second
Yeah. Oh, that's actually, you ask a really good question. The first visit, on your first visit, don't bring your significant other. Come along. Don't laugh. I've seen this where the spouse was gonna accompany the husband for the half-hour visits. I had to deal with this. So the first visit you do alone. On the second visit, I think we actually the rules may vary, but you really you're expected as if your significant other comes along, that's actually a good sign. And we paid for them. I mean, they used the same hotel room, right? So it was really just the airfare. And we actually, I think that was really not an issue. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Susanne.
Okay, thank you.